All right, hallelujah. We're going to now go back to Shemot Eser, Exodus chapter 10. And we're going to look at bo. You know, this word bo, go. We're going to see that thematically kind of throughout as well. But this ninth plague of the locusts, okay, let's just kind of capture. Well, let's go back some and look at what the progression of these plagues are addressing. What are these plagues really addressing as relates to Pharaoh, his power, Egypt, their structure, their societal structure, their spiritual structure? What are these judgments, these plagues addressing, or what are they responding to with Egypt?
Well, I think some of the plagues that Moses did, the magicians did it too, and it was kind of like it was like a battle of the gods.
Okay.
And you know, who could do what, and then you know it just got to the point where you know they couldn't hang with Yah, and you know, and he killed the firstborn, and so it was just so devastating. It just shut everything down, and so you know, everything was done according to his purpose, and so he walked Moshe through everything. He told him exactly what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, and you know, he just did everything so that he could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was the Most High and he could deliver. And that was, and so that was the whole, you know, that was, you know, mainly, you know, what it was, but he walked him through it.
Yes.
So
excellent, most excellent. And so in this presentation of judgment, what you're seeing is Yah's sovereignty over creation and over the hierarchy of deities that may be present on earth, particularly being that at that particular time in history, Mitzrayim, Kemet, Egypt was the ruling empire on earth. Brother Kim, I see your hand. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir. Right there.
Make sure you speak up. You're kind of low.
Okay, can you hear me now?
A little better.
Okay. One thing that stood out to me was when it said, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, so that I show these signs of mine before him. The one thing that kind of stood out to me, that's sort of like a reprobate. You remember in that part when in the New Testament, I wouldn't say reprobate, but that part where he said that he handed them over to their own desires.
Right. Romans 1. Yes, sir.
Yeah, he blinded them so that they would not repent. I think that was and
I'll show you. I'll bring it up real quick.
Yeah. And he said that, yeah. And so that was one of the things that stood out to me, that he was actually doing the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. You know, Pharaoh might wanted to bow down a couple of times, but he couldn't because the Most High was dealing with his heart. You know, he kind of turned his heart against him.
Right. Yeah, right. We have it here in Romans 1. Just one moment, Ima.
Okay.
So this is the passage you're referring to. Therefore, Elohim gave them up to uncleanness and the lust of their hearts, to disrespect their bodies among themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into the falsehood, and worshiped and served what was created, rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Because of this, Elohim gave them over to degrading passions, for even their women exchanged natural relations for what is against nature. Likewise, the men also, having left natural relations with women, burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing indecency, and receiving back the reward which was due to their straying. And they did not think to do, and they did not think it worthwhile to possess the knowledge of Elohim, Elohim gave them over to a worthless or reprobate mind to do what is improper. Selah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what stood out to me in that first verse. Yes, sir.
Selah. Ima Sharon?
Yeah, I was looking at the fact that that each one of the plagues, they had Mizraim had deities for them, and the power that they had no well, I can't pronounce her name. This is just one. She of the hell, her name, Nut, that's who it is. Her name was Nut. She was the deity of the sky. But
yes,
but she had no power over the hell. Yah did.
right.
And it was just that each one of them, each one of the plagues had a deity over it. And the control was under Yah. It wasn't nothing. They couldn't stop it. It wasn't nothing they could do. But Yah had to control. Your deity might as well have been just laying there dead because it wasn't doing nothing. It wasn't able to do anything. That's what I kind of saw.
Selah. Selah. Any other thoughts?
One thing that came to my mind, and which we've all kind of gone over it, but it reminds me of some of what we're going through, what we're beginning to see, even, that we've experienced is commerce, the difficulty of keeping your commerce going, what we're facing in the world today. And it kind of puts me in the mind that, Yah can shut things down. And he systematically came against whatever Mizraim thought it was great at. Yah just systematically came against everything.
Yes, very much so.
He just shut it down.
So interestingly, now there's scholarly debate over whether or not this stele from 3,500 years ago actually describes the 10 plagues that are taking place. It's called the Tempest stele from ancient Egypt or from Kemet. And so some people are saying that it is in support of the 10 plagues, and some are saying that it is not in support of it, but it's something to look into and consider as relates to what historically had taken place with this matter here. I want to say Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Faith to Sean, to Beit Mashiyach, in our study of this week's Torah portion, Parashat Bo. We're now having our conversation about it. We're discussing the plagues and what that symbolized. What was the purpose of the plagues? What was the outcome, and what did Yah intend to do in bringing forth, the plagues that came to the Egyptians and those who did not keep.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
You said this stele.
Tempest stele, like the word for storm, tempest.
Tempest stele.
Yes.
Okay. That depicts. People say it depicts the.
Some argue for it. Some say it has nothing to do with it. Right.
Okay.
So there's scholarly divergence over whether or not it is in support of the Exodus of Israel or not.
Right.
But the name of the stele is the Tempest stele. A pharaoh by the name of Ahmose was ruling at that particular time. So that can present a historical witness, but some say it may not present a historical witness.
And then there's another one that it's called Rekhire, or Rekhmire. I'll send it to you. But it's the Temple of Karnak, and it depicts blacks building the temple with bricks. Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Okay,
'Cause-
sounds
'cause
good.
I may be pronouncing it wrong. But
Okay.
yeah, I was looking
You
for.
post it in the chat too as well.
Yeah, I'll do that once I
Okay.
pull it up. Okay.
Toda Rabah. Toda Rabah. And so the fact that you all brought up the fact that these plagues were really judgments on many deities of ancient Egypt is an excellent point. Of course, the sun with the last plague of darkness that we read, the second to last plague of darkness, being a major judgment over Ra, and that Ra doesn't even have power. Of course, you had Tahapi or Tameri. Hapi was the name of the Nile. That was one of the first plagues that had taken place. Flies. They had gods of flies. They had gods of frogs. But they were what they would call Netaru. And Netaru really is reflective of nature. The Egyptians will tell you that they had one supreme God, but there were many other in the pantheon that Yah came to address. Yes, sir, Moray. Yehoiakim, I see your hand, Akeem.
Yeah, I was just looking at the number 10, and when you see the number 10, it shows fullness or completion thereof. So Egypt or Mizraim was completely plagued by the representation of the 10, the number 10. You also see it like in the 10 moral laws or the 10 laws. Like that's completion of morality, what that Hashem gave us. I see that, Mizraim was completely plagued, and that was a representation that what Hashem had did. And then when he gave us the 10 moral laws, that we have completion of morality. So that's why I look at the number 10 a little bit. That's what I'm seeing today. As we read.
Yes, sir. Toda Rabbah. Excellent, excellent. This is why we study, because everyone is going to be able to bring out something that we're not able to see, and that just enhances our comprehension of what it is that we're seeking to do to serve Yah. So excellent. Toda Rabbah. Anything else, Moray?
No, not for right now. Just we on
Okay.
break now. I'm multitasking, but I'm listening in the background.
No doubt. Hallelujah. Beseda. Toda Aki. Kim. Yes, sir. Kim, you saw your hand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One thing that I noticed when I was going back reading over it while y'all were talking, if you notice some of the plagues, some of the things that he sent upon Egypt, the flies, the frogs, the locusts, these are all consumers. I mean, these are all destroyers. Locusts, they are destroyers. I don't know if anybody has ever seen a swarm of locusts when they
they leave nothing, right?
Yeah, they leave nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. They leave a tree, the grass, everything is left barren. And fleas as well. You understand what I'm saying? Fleas, when a dog, if you look at an animal that has been infested with fleas, fleas can actually kill an animal. I've actually known dogs to die from flea infested, and frogs as well. Frogs, once they get around a pond, it's not too good to have frogs around, too many frogs around around small bodies of water, because they will eat most of the insects up and things like that, and which destroys some of the fish. So that was some of the things that I kind of noticed with some of these plagues that he brought upon Mizraim. And then not only that, the final one was the destroyer or the death angel that went in. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I noticed that similarity as well. And I don't know how that really kind of plays out with the destruction or the destroyer that comes in with the light and darkness situation, because light does destroy darkness. Just like knowledge destroys ignorance. You understand what I'm saying?
Undeniably.
Truth destroys a lie. So that's certain things.
There you go. Hallelujah. So one thing we want to look at this as is a recapitulation of creation and the establishment of order. Shabbat shalom to you, Brother Duran. I see that you've come in. Hallelujah. But again, when we look at Exodus, even when we go back and we look at Noah's flood, okay, when we look at, these major events that take place, what you're actually looking at is a recapitulation of creation back in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Okay, this is a very interesting order though, because what's last is first, what's first is last. We see darkness, you know, being the second to last plague. Of course, in Genesis 1, when we go back and we look at Genesis 1, what was first was darkness, right? The earth came to be formless and empty. So this lets us know something was prior to this. If the earth came to be this way, that doesn't mean it was incepted that way. That means something was prior to this. But at a time such as this here, we are in a very similar state where darkness is felt by many, okay? However, where Israel was, there was light, okay? And so these are things that we have to look at spiritually as well, and even prophetically, because what we're dealing with a precedent of judgment. We're dealing with a sign that our fathers experience that will be tokens and insightful for us as their children to understand prophetically what is taking place. Okay, we see Israel going through the birth pains. We see them going through their hardship, their trials, their tribulations, and that's right prior to their deliverance. So this is a very similar pattern that we can look at for our day and time to understand our deliverance is also drawing nigh. And that this darkness, which the world is entrenched in right now, and we can feel it even, is really emblematic that we are about to experience a burst of light. We're about to experience Yah say, let there be light, and there was light again, because we are at this place again where darkness came to be, where they came to be formless and empty, the earth does, and darkness was on the face of the deep, right? But for those of us who are able to ascend above that, is because we've entered the spirit of Elohim, which is moving on the face of the waters. That's why Yahushua told us and told Kepha, where's your faith, when he walked on the water, but he fell in because he got distracted. He was giving his attention to the winds that were blowing about him, as opposed to keeping his eyes on the master. Okay? So this darkness that was felt was a very thick darkness. Masai, hand me that the book on the What does it mean, darkness that is felt? What kind of thoughts come to you all's mind about that? A darkness that was felt. What does that mean?
Sin.
Okay, excellent, excellent. We got some chats here in the room. Sleek Eye, let me see what's going on in the chat. Oh, okay. Toda Rabai staff for posting that in there. Any other thoughts? A darkness that is felt. What is that saying?
More, it reminded me of kind of you know how when we were growing up and you looked at you know what would have been a scary movie, and it would just be dark, and you were frightened of the darkness. It was so, you know, you had an evil inclination about it. And I think, just as the brother said, I think it's the evilness. It strikes us as of today that we, you know, you don't even want to turn on the news. Some things you just now you don't even want to see because everything is about. It's like a death.
Yes. Yes.
That's heavy in the land. Something just so it's just evil.
Right. Say loud. Anyone else have anything to share? A darkness which is felt. What comes to your mind when you hear that?
Well, I agree. It's kind of like it's the darkness that permeates your soul that like impacts it. Like everyone was saying, and it's not like you actually can reach out and feel the darkness with your hand. It's one that's done internally, and it's like it's shocking, scary. The real boogeyman when just like when you turn the lights out as a kid. You know, for me, I used to be at times my uncle used to scare me, so I was kind of scared of the dark a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that, I feel.
Okay, Toda. We got Ima Sharon's hand up. Ima Sharon. I'm gonna come
Yes,
back to you, brother Kim. But yes, go ahead, Ima.
I was thinking about a shadow, and I was thinking about the scripture that say, "Yea, do we walk through the valleys and shadows of death, I will fear no evil, for thou
Yes,
art with
indeed.
me." And I thought about it because the darkness of a shadow, you can't see through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they were saying about, that was the type of darkness that you can't adjust yourself to see through it. You can't, your eyes will not adjust to it. And it was not only they couldn't adjust their eyes, but they could actually feel that evil, because it was evil. And so that's what it reminded me of, a shadow.
Hallelujah. Beautiful. Colt Faith, Deshaun, did you want to make a comment? You had your hand up.
Yeah, and I put it down, but I'll go ahead and share what I was going to share.
Please do. Awesome.
You know, one thing about the darkness is it still is, even though it's a slower frequency, it still has frequency, you know,
Okay.
that we feel. And also in the darkness, we have to think about it. You know, it is like it's like a cool, it's not hot. It's gotta be, it has to be some sort of temperature that comes to it as well, if we are to feel it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And with it permeating, you know, our senses and our eyes trying to adjust to it, it doesn't adjust to it. So our level of conscious becomes more keen, you know, to anything that might move. You know, anything that, and it doesn't even have to be a physical thing that moves. At this point, we are navigating in the spiritual realm, because we have been taken, all of our senses, most of them have been taken away from. You know, so that's a darkness that's being able to be felt.
Selah. Toda. Selah. Brother Kim, did you want to go ahead and make a comment as well?
Yes, sir. One thing that when they was talking about what does that feel like, or what does that look like? I remember one best way to kind of describe it, I think for me, is, I don't know if anybody has ever been asleep and they find themselves not able to breathe, or you're dreaming and you can't wake up. You know, you want to scream but you can't, and it's like you're frozen. That to me, you know, is almost like when you talk about a darkness that can be felt. I don't know if that has ever happened to anybody, or like when you're falling and you're in the sleep and you're trying to, you know, you're about to hit the ground and you wake up, you know, but you can't. You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking about that when someone sharing. Yeah.
And so I wanted to add to that, and everything is excellent. You know, this is all insightful information. You know, one thing about it is that we have a physical darkness that exists, but there is also a spiritual, and I would even call it a psychological darkness that also exists as well. And this is something that made the Mitzrites shut down for 3 days. What causes you to stay in your room with no lights on and you're just unable to do anything? What type of pathology would they classify that as? Depression. So you're dealing with a spiritual and psychological state of depression here with the Mitzrites. Why? Because everything that they known and have related to power has been stripped from them, right? And so now that these things that they're familiar with, that empowered them and their empire, it has no power. So they are in a state of not only dejection, but also deprivation. And so now they're experiencing a sensory deprivation in addition to that, right? And they're unable to do anything. They're froze, they're stuck. It's like that feeling of terror that you talk about, Brother Kim. It's like that temperature and that vibration, cult faith that you bring up, that they're now experiencing. They're at a lower vibration, right? But here it is, them not even able to see one another because they're so much in what that movie Get Out calls the sunken place, right? They didn't rise from his place for 3 days. They're in a sunken place. All the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Why? Because they're in the light of life. They're serving Yah. They're keeping Yah's word. They're doing what Yah has commanded them to do, right? So this is what's important here, right? What is the difference between Israel and the Egyptians, even up until this point? What is taking place with Israel? What is taking place with Egypt? As a people, what is taking place?
I feel like Israel is being strengthened by every act that Yah does. Israel is seeing now. They're seeing that Yah is able.
Right.
And Egypt is learning that Yah is able in another sense, that he is in control.
Amen. Selah. Moreh Yehoiakim.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. It's kind of low.
No, I missed my. I didn't have raise my hand. My bad. I pushed the wrong button.
Basetta. Brother Kim, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
It was just like the elder was. She's kind of hinted on it there for a minute, that he was sort of establishing Israel. But not only that, I believe that he was really making an introduction to Israel, right?
Okay.
Not only to Israel, but also to Egypt, right? Because Mizraim, right? Listen, the founder of Mizraim was raised in the same house as Shem, right? So I don't know if Mizraim, well, it was apparent, I shouldn't say that, but Mizraim lost their way, right? They started to worship and serve other gods and other deities. But there was a time, right? Because the Most High said it. He told Moshe that he said, to my name, to your father Isaac, and all them, by my name, where I was not known, right?
Yes, sir.
So that means they had to have some sort of understanding of who the God of Israel was, right? Because we do know this as well. When Joseph went off into Mizraim, right? And he interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh, and before this new Pharaoh rose up. So it was not like the Mizrahites were not familiar with the El of Israel. You understand what I'm saying? They knew who he was. But I think this was sort of like, if I'm looking at it and I'm listening and meditating on it, it was almost as if this was another introduction. Okay. Y'all may have Mizrahites, y'all may have forgotten, and Israel, boy, Mizrahites, y'all may have forgotten who I was, right? And in Israel, I have not forgotten who you were.
Say that.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he does everything grand, because he is, he's the creator of all things. That's just what he do,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in revealing himself and strengthening Israel, here's the question: what is Israel doing to receive their strength, to receive this revelation? There's two things in particular that I'm thinking of that is allowing for Israel to experience this reality of Yah as opposed to experience what the Mitzrites are experiencing. I see some hands here. Let's see who we got going. Ima Sharon, I have Ima Sharon come on, and Brother Kim, if you want to go ahead again, that's fine. Ima Sharon, what are you seeing taking place that Israel is doing to receive this favor?
Well, it's like what you, as in Revelation 16 and 10, it talks about, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom
Come on now.
full of darkness,
Come on,
and
Iman.
they gnawed their tongues for pain. It generated, I can't even imagine what they went through for those 3 days.
Come on now.
Because when I read this, it said as you were talking about the depression, I didn't understand at first what you was talking about. I looked at the revelation. If you gnaw on your tongue, you don't know what to do. You done went to a whole you you done went to a whole different level that you would even gnaw yourself to make yourself even get into that type of pain. Just biting my tongue, it hurt.
Right.
It just a
100%.
little nip hurt. I can't imagine that you sitting up there gnawing your tongue and craziness because you don't know what to do.
Yes.
You talking about depression. That's not even the right word, Moray.
Right. It's beyond that. It's beyond that. And I'm glad you brought this passage up because, again, I was just mentioning what we're reading now is really a sign of what will happen at the judgment during the end of days as well. This is the same principle. This is the same pattern. It's the same paradigm that Yah has given us through the book of Exodus. And so we see that this is a recapitulation of it as well, because everything that we're in now with the earth, this formlessness and void has once again fallen on the earth. This darkness in the beginning where Yah has to say, let there be light, is once again fallen on the earth. And now the people of light are the ones who have to stand up again, just like they did in Mitzrayim or in Egypt. And this is what this is about. Brother Kim, I'm gonna turn it back to you, but let me just say this. The two things that Israel had to do to receive Yah's favor is, one, obey his word. Everything that Yah told them to do to avoid the plagues, Israel had to carry out. But what did that do for Israel in carrying out those instructions on those commandments that Yah gave them? But unify them. Israel was not unified up until this point. They were so divergent. They were so divided. They were so antagonistic to one another because they had no ideology. They had no principles that universalized their reality. And so what's so powerful about this portion that we're now reading, particularly, and we'll get to that in like the 12th chapter, is that this is the beginning of the Torah for Israel. Parashat Bo is significant because Parashat Bo actually provides us with the beginning of the instructions for Israel. And this is specifically related to the first thing that Yah sanctified and set apart in creation again, which is time. So it only makes sense that what Yah orders and instructs Israel to make holy is time again. And time is really all that we have, and how we use our time, how we observe our time, how we follow time, whose time we're following is so important because it allows us to acknowledge Yah as the creator of heaven, earth, and sea, and everything in them, because we're following the pattern that Yah has given us to proclaim him sovereign. And this is a very important thing, okay? But for Israel, what strengthened Israel, what made Israel receive the revelation was their obedience and their unity. And this is the only way that they could have overcome Egypt, is through the faithfulness to Yah and their unification. And this is the very important message for us today. This is a very important message for us today. The more obedient we become, the more faithful we become, the more unified we become. The more unified we become, the more undefeatable we become against the beast, against this fourth beast that we're dealing with today, against this empire that we're up against today. Let's make this practical. Let's make this a reality. Let's not play religion. Let's understand the role of kingdom that is before us, and ambassadors of this kingdom that is before us. But if we're slaves to Babylon, there's nothing that we can do for Zion. If we're heeding Babylon's word and laboring for Babylon and building up Babylon's kingdom and empire, there's nothing we can do for Yah in the kingdom that he's given us and put within us. There's nothing that we can do for Yah if we are oppressed and short of spirit because of the severity of labor that we're suffering from. Does that make sense to you all? You all seeing what this is really pointing to? And applying this to our reality today? Yay, nay?
Yes, Kane, I see it.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, I see it.
Anything else in regard to this darkness that is felt? Anybody else?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to say when you were talking about that time, that's the first thing he established during the creation, when he separated the light from the darkness. That is the beginning of time. Remember the two lights, the one that would rule the day and the one that would rule the night? That's how time is told. You know what I mean? In seasons. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that's so important.
Yeah.
That is so important for us to really capture as relates to why Yah in Exodus 12 starts our instructions with how to observe time. It orients us in a completely different reality. I did a lesson, not a lesson, my last podcast was about this so-called New Year that everybody's following, and their orientation for time is Gregorian. So they're following a Catholic calendar, but as a Catholic calendar, it has nothing to do with scripture. They're following their own calendar. They're following an entirely different set of deities, of which this first month in the Gregorian calendar is named after a god of two faces, an idol of two faces that deals with fortune and prognostication and things of that nature. It doesn't deal with the Most High in the scriptures. Janus is a god of fortune and of two doors, so to speak. It has nothing to do with Yah. So we have to reorient ourselves. And this is what Israel is having to do right now. They're reorienting themselves from a materialistic way of life, even though they were servants, but they were building up a material reality for this empire. Excuse me. And they had to completely detach from it. And we're going to read that in the next portion because there's some stuff that we got to really understand a little more deeper as relates to going about liberation and, nation building. This is about nation building, okay?
Can I say something?
Please do, yes, indeed.
I remember a couple of Shabbats back, you were talking about when I asked you about why sometimes in the scripture or in the Torah, they refer to use Jacob, his name Jacob, and then he would refer to him as Israel. And
Yes,
you were
sir.
saying how that was the representation of one being the flesh and then the other being the spirit.
Right.
Okay, now when you were speaking, I was wondering, when he the physical part or the flesh part, when he brought them out of Egypt, he brought them out of that darkness of Egypt. And then when you come over into the new, or what we call the New Testament, I hate using that terminology, but that one scripture where it says, be in the world, but not of it, come out of her.
Yes.
Revelations.
Yes.
And so he was always bringing us out.
Yes.
So that's the spiritual part of that physical part in Exodus.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great vision. And that's what we have to see. Israel's problem has always been wanting to follow the world, right? Let us have a king like the Gentiles, right? They always wanted to assimilate as opposed to set apart. Yah called for us to be a holy nation. That means a set apart nation. We're not like every other kingdom on this earth or any other system on this earth. We're a set apart people that keeps the Torah of Yah. That's what sets us apart, following Yah's commandments. And the world doesn't want that. Now they want the results of keeping Torah, but they don't want the work of keeping Torah. Does that make sense? You all follow what I'm saying with that? They want the results and the outcome of following Torah, but they don't want to engage in the work of keeping Torah. Okay. Yes, go, Sister Colt Faith. Yes, go ahead, please.
I have a question.
Okay.
I missed the second part of when you were saying to obtain God's favor, Israel needed to do two things. Number one was obey. And I know that faithfulness, brought about unification, and unification brings about undefeatableness. But
Yes.
what was number two?
It was unification.
Okay.
It was the unification. I mean, the main proclamation of Israel that said twice a day is, Hear, O Israel, Yah's Elohim, Yah's one, right? Yahushua was about to be stoned because he said, I and the Father are one. But they didn't understand that he was speaking not only for himself, but any and all who are able to obey and keep the will of Yah and to carry out the will of Yah. In fact, you read over in John 17, he prays to the Father, make them one with me so that we may be one with you, right? So this oneness, this unity is really one of the main secrets of the entire kingdom. This unity that we receive from observing Torah, right? Carrying Torah out and really first embodying Torah and then carrying it out is what allows for us to unify, because now, my opinion, it doesn't matter because the word of our king is what takes precedence over everything, right? And so the more faithful we become to this word, the more principled we become, and more importantly, the more unified within ourselves first and foremost, because we got to reconcile some things within ourselves first, right? We got to be one within ourselves. We got to make sure our conscience is clear, that our heart and our minds are in agreement. That's oneness, right? Our unification, our spirit, our soul, and our bodies are unified. There's no, duality that we're truly wrestling with, because now we're serving Yah with a clear conscience. What they call that a whole heart now, right? And then that brings all of us together. I believe it's Ephesians 4, where it talks about there's one faith, there's one Elohim, there's one Messiah, there's one baptism, right? So on and so forth. Well, how do you achieve that? And that's through the study of Torah and the application of it through our faithfulness. And then we become one. There's a little more to it than that. I'm sure Moreh Yehoiakim can support me on this, because I've been having some conversations with some other Israelite camps, and they have a hard time really accepting the position of the Talmud, which is the oral law, in our culture, because they think it's a European book, right? But the Talmud has a very important role, the oral law, which is in support of the Torah, the commandments. Keep in mind, here's a question. This is kind of sidebar, but we're going to come back to it. Is there a difference between Torah and Mitzvot? And if there is, what is it? Is there a difference between Torah and Mitzvot? And if so, then let me, first of all, what is the definition of Torah? What is the definition of mitzvah? I'm gonna go singular. What is the definition of Torah? What is the definition of mitzvah?
Torah is law.
No, that's not the definition of Torah. That's a common misconception.
No,
Torah does not mean law.
I'll get back with you.
Can someone say what Torah means?
Is it instruction?
Yes.
Yes.
Torah means instructions.
I was about to say that.
Torah means instructions. The word hach means law in Hebrew. If you want to deal with law, it's the Hebrew word hach, from where you get the huchat, okay? Okay. So what does mitzvah mean? Which is also another word for, it's a synonym as well. But what does mitzvah translate to?
Good.
To say that again, I'm sorry.
Good.
Mitzvah.
That's law.
Close. There's a more
Is it-
specific definition.
Oh, give me that.
Is it like
Mitzvot.
order or?
Okay, you're getting close. Mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? It's a good deed, but it's when it's carried out. Because you're
It's an
carrying out.
action, like a commandment or
Bam.
action.
There it is, a commandment. Okay?
Okay.
Commandment. Mitzvah means to command from the Hebrew word sav. Torah means instruction, which comes from the word yara, which means to point in the direction of. Okay? So the Torah gives us the instructions on the mitzvot. Okay, they give us the instructions on how to keep the commandments. Okay, so when you receive a mitzvah, you have to also receive the Torah on how to keep the mitzvah. When you receive the commandment, you have to receive the instructions on how to keep the commandment, right? So when it comes down to, this is kind of a sidebar, but again, this is all relative. When it comes down to, when you read in the book of Acts, that they're coming back from Mashiach's tomb, it says that they were a Sabbath day walk from where they were, going from where they were going to, from where they were coming from, right? Well, where do you get the understanding of what a Sabbath day's walk is? Where do you get that understanding from? How long is a Sabbath day walk?
24 hours.
No, you can't walk for 24 hours on Shabbat.
I mean, no, but it says 6 hours.
Oh, 6 hours. You said 6?
Yeah, but I was going from that
So
sundown.
you can travel on Shabbat on foot for 6 hours.
What
Is
is
that what you're saying? You can walk for
day?
6 hours on Shabbat?
No.
You can't.
Yeah, 6 hours, isn't it?
No, you can't travel for 6 hours on Shabbat. That's a pretty gross violation, to be honest with you. But the question is, where is the source of that from? Where does that come from? Where do you get the idea or the understanding of what a Sabbath day distance is according to the law?
Is it Leviticus?
It's nowhere in the 5 books of Moshe. And this is what's so important for
Oh, I
us to
got you. I
understand.
got you. I see what you're saying.
It's nowhere found in the book of the books of Moses, the express books of Moses, right? How do we make tzitzit? The scriptures tell us to make tzitzit, right? To put on these fringes. Where do we find out how to make them? The scriptures don't tell us how to make them.
Hold on.
So how do we know how to make them?
I've been wondering that.
What gives us the instructions on how to make the tzitzit? What do they mean in when we read in Exodus 13, it talks about placing these things as a sign on our hand and between our eyes. What do we do to do that? How do we make that? Right? Where do you get that instruction from? And so this is why it's important for us to understand the oral law, which is what is known as the Talmud, because in there it captures that. I would make it more express and say the Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah is a very important practice of what you call jurisprudence, right? The Torah or the law, the book of Moshe, the books of Moshe establishes the jurisdiction of Yah. The Mishnah establishes the jurisprudence of the Torah, which gives us the right way of executing the law. We don't have that universal understanding, we're going to find ourselves, with so many different camps like we got today. How do we know when Shabbat starts? Because there's some people who follow now a lunar Shabbat, right? They follow the 7th day after the new moon as a Shabbat. How do we unify as Israel? Because, and this is the point, the unification that we get, it has to be founded on something, not opinions. I believe our unification comes from precedent and principle, ancestrally passed down from generation to generation. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Brother Kim.
Okay, so what is the Sabbath day's walk?
Let me look it up. It's only so many okay. In Jewish halakha, the Techum Shabbat, or the Shabbat limit, or simply Techum, is a limited physical area in which a Jew is permitted to walk on foot on Shabbat and Jewish holy days. In general, this area is calculated as 2,000 cubits, about 1 kilometer in every direction from the place or settlement where a person was located when Shabbat began. So a kilometer. Let's translate a kilometer. So a kilometer is not even a mile. You can't even walk a mile on Shabbat.
That's why he says stay in your house, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh my God.
Really, you keep
Stay
your
in
butt
your
at home. You're not to carry any burden out of the house on Shabbat.
Yeah.
It tells us not to carry any burden out of the house or bring one in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ideal because this is a day of repose, of rest, of refreshing, but most importantly, of communion with the Spirit and your family.
Yeah.
Now, for most, I'm gonna use this as an example. Listen to me now. The Orthodox Jews today typically live within a mile of their synagogue. They build their communities around the Knesset, right? And from there, on Shabbat, most, if not all of them, walk the Shabbat distance, the Techum, to their synagogue to fellowship with one another. Then they walk back home after service is done. Because what that is doing, it is giving them a universal order. It's universalizing their reality. It's giving them a social construct by which they will have so much unity that it's ridiculous. But we don't want to use that by and large in our order because we got our own thing that we want to do. And every time Israel went astray, particularly during the days of the judges, what took place? What does the scriptures describe Israel did that caused them to go astray? Anybody know what phrase is used that they used when Israel went astray every time?
Whoring.
Huh?
Whoring.
Somewhat. So let's go to the book of Judges and let's see how Judges closes, because this is what Israel did every time that they started to go astray. Verse 25. In those days there was no sovereign. Israel did what was right in his own eye. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. There was no unification here. Everybody was doing what they felt was right in their own opinion. Well, I believe it's like this. I believe it's like that. Excuse me. They did not have a code that unified them. And that's why the oral law with the Torah, with the law of Moses, is so important. Because that way we can start to see what our ancestors did historically and how they made a ruling about what we should do. And Yahushua in Matthew 23 told us that the Pharisees and the scribes sit on the seat of Moses. Therefore, what they tell you to do, do it. Just don't do as they do because they don't keep Torah. But if they're going to give you a ruling, it's going to be a proper ruling because they know the Torah. They just don't carry it out. That was his problem with the Pharisees. Now, that's why he called them hypocrites. You talk a good game, but you're not walking. You're acting. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Occult Faith. That was a very extended response. But unity is that important. And we got to be that detailed about it. Brother Duran, go ahead, my man. I see you on the mic. You want to say something, my brother?
I keep getting dropped when I get calls through. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, you good. Did you want to say anything?
Heavy teaching tonight. I'm listening.
We live. Brother Kim, are you wanting to say something, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. And,
Okay.
and I kind of always kind of bring it back to today. And when you're talking about this unity, and we always going off, you know, wanting to do our own thing, but it seems like somewhere deep down inside of us as a people, that's the one thing that we always crave, but we can never get. It's the one thing we always seek, but we can never find, is the unity and the coming together as a whole, as a one people, you know. And I was wondering if you know how they say some things are just built into your DNA. And I wonder if that's just something that is just built inside of us, that we, you know, we always crying out for it. Unity, unity, unity. We need to come together. We need to stop doing this, doing that, you know, just unity, unity. But we can't never find it.
Right.
And I was wondering if that was just, you know, something that's just placed inside of us from the Most High, you know.
No. I wouldn't say that. I think human nature has its tendency to, again, want to reap the benefits without doing the work.
Okay.
You know, I think that's the biggest problem. It's like, if we think of us as a people, we want reparations, but we're not willing to organize to get reparations, even though scripture tells us no man is going to redeem us. So that's a whole different story.
Right.
But the point that I'm making is unity requires effort. And to experience true unity, we have to learn to become more selfless, right? We have to learn to abnegate ourselves, put ourselves in a position where we can be more agreeable with one another. But we got to do the hard work of uniting, and that's like coming up with common ideas. Unity starts in the mind before it goes to the heart. You have to understand what unity requires, what unity is principally established upon. There's a law to oneness. There's a law to unity. But if we don't understand the law of unity, the law of harmony, there's no way that we're going to come together. And that's why the Torah is so important, because in our kingdom, we have, in the kingdom of human beings, we have a law, and this is what the Torah does give us. Every kingdom has a law to it. Every kingdom does. But in our kingdom, somehow, some way, we want to absolve this law and say we don't have a law. We just want to do what's right in our own eyes, right? We want to be the king in our own throne and have no one else to answer to, but that's not the reality. We have to understand that there's an order to life that we have to discover, internalize, and then apply. And this is what becoming the word made flesh is all about, because if we all become the word, that's where the oneness truly occurs. If we all reflect the image and likeness of Yah in which he created us, there's unity. Even in our individualized reality, there will be unity, right? But if we're continually looking at ourselves as individuals and not individualized like parts of a whole, like grains of sand on a beach, right? Or like snowflakes with snow, then we don't understand that we're a part of a collective reality, we're never going to accomplish anything. If we don't understand that we are members of a kingdom and that the kingdom has a law that governs it, what can we do? So we got a lot of work to do, because we got to know what the law is about first. We have to become the law, and then we have to apply it every day. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brother Kim.
Man, I'm just sitting over here. I'm just getting blown away. I was having this same conversation with a friend of mine, and she was saying how, you know, that she was a strong and independent person or independent woman. And I asked her, what are you independent of? You understand? You know, we hear that term so much. I'm an independent person. What are you independent of? You know, and I think that saying, and I was trying to explain to her, you know, that when we sit back and see ourselves as an individual, and this is just confirmation what was I was trying to explain to her, that there is no individuality in the body of the Messiah. You understand? Right. We are all one whole collective. We live and breathe together.
Right.
And when you said that, I was just like, wow, I was just having this same conversation, you know, and how these little words and these little terms have warped our minds to believe these little lies that keep us separated. You know, it's just
Right.
I want to say that, you know, I was just having that same conversation about that. But yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I mean, when this age entered into the theory of relativity, or the age of relativity, everything became personalized and individually focused. I won't say individualized, because being individualized is not necessarily a bad thing, because we are all like unique, right? But we're not separate from each other. We're not independent of each other. We're interdependent, in fact, right? We can't be codependent. We can be interdependent. That means we are, you know, we are dependent on each other to do what we're supposed to do to make everything function. Codependent means like, you know what, can you just support me? And there's no reciprocity there. Being interdependent means like, I'm gonna give you what you need and you're gonna give me what I need, and we're gonna help each other grow. Okay, so excellent point. I did see some hands. Imali.
Yes, I was thinking there were two things. I was thinking about our experience coming out of, with the church, so to speak, where the structure was always the leader, the one leader with, deifying the one leader. And for all of our, machinations, we still tend to, continue to go by that structure, because we, not wanting to refer to anything else, to understand how it was done.
Right.
How it has been done in communities and that of ancient times. So another thing is the same people that don't, are people that don't want to refer to the commentaries. They will study Black law. We will study Black law, and then you will go to your revised statute in your state. You're tearing up revised statutes of your municipal law. You go into your municipal law to argue something. We go to these things readily, but when it comes to Yah, we're not willing to
get into that
sit
detail
down and really get to it, right? And those things hit home pretty hard too. They hit home. Those commentaries hit home pretty hard.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now you gotta filter through it, because there's some things that you gotta understand our opinions in there.
Yes.
So that's something that's very important. You got to be very discerning in reading that.
I was gonna say that the law of Torah is totally opposite as far as Western world is concerned, or Westernization, because here we have the whole concept of private ownership of land, which and personal property tax, which goes against people coming together. Yeah, and it goes against people coming together. It goes against unification, just from the whole idea of private ownership of land. That takes away everybody's connection together to the land.
Yeah.
But that's basically, and that's a newer concept, because the Indians, they didn't even do that. They didn't even do that until like the turn 1890s with the Dawes Act, with the allotment of land, because they believed that the land belonged to everybody.
Right.
So it just goes totally against, just that whole idea. It's just the way the infrastructure in which we live our lives is totally contrary to the Torah.
Indeed, because Torah sets up for what they would call possession of the land, not ownership. You come on, sit up. Possession of the land means you're the steward, you're managing it, you're taking care of it, right? Ownership means it's mine and no one else's. Now, we did have deeds, we did have, the Jubilee, where ancestral lands turned back to its original possessor, but that's to keep order though. You know, there were
Yeah.
boundaries, no doubt, because we have to have, you know, an order in our society, but that land, it belongs to Yah. Everything belongs to Yah. The earth and the fullness thereof, you know, is Yah. So excellent point too, Aki. Excellent point. Any other thoughts regarding unification and oneness before we move on? All right, so chapter 11, we deal with now the prophetic announcement of the death of the firstborn. Here's my question. What precipitated this plague to come forth? What was the cause of the death of the firstborn for Egypt to come about?
Pharaoh himself.
Get more in depth.
He spoke his own plague in. You remember, because his edict was to kill the firstborn of Israel.
Okay.
But the very thing that he spoke, the Most High turned back on him. So
okay. Excellent. Okay. Excellent. So really wasn't just the firstborn. This was all the males. Remember, anyone that was born during this particular time period, any male that was born was murdered, right? And so not only that, when you read the book of Jasher, it goes into more depth of how cruel this administration was on Israel, what they did with the babies, the male babies of Israel. But this is again, when we look at this and we parallel it to our day, you can still see very similar approaches. And I like the word you used earlier, Ima Leoria, machinations that are being used to keep us down, to keep us in bondage, to keep us in fear, right? To keep our vibration low and our spirits short and broken. And so this was, like you just said, Akim, if you want to use the word, a karmic recompensation. This is judgment. It's like he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. Now you're bringing this on your own head. Because what Mitzrayim did to Israel, well, we're going to break you how you broke us. But now we're seeing Israel starting to have the transfer of wealth here. The riches of the Gentiles be transferred. And all they did here was ask. What was Egypt's sentiment of Israel at this particular point in time?
Straight up fear.
They were fearful.
Yeah, I mean, they had to stand in awe of them. I mean, you know, I mean, if I were to put myself in the shoes of the Mizrahites back then, and then I've seen all this happen, and you know, my firstborn son is laying there dead, and I know that the reason that all these things, I done had balls all over me, flies and frogs all in my crib, you know.
Right.
And I know that all these things done happen because of Johnny that stays next door, his God. Yeah, I'm gonna have a newfound respect for him.
Yep.
Yeah. So he asked me, I'm gonna give it to him.
They just want to leave anything.
They just want to go.
They're exasperated. They're like, we're tired of these folks. Egypt is ruined, right? Let them go. All they want to do is go. Let them go. You keep holding them back now. Don't you see that Israel is destroyed? I mean, Egypt is destroyed. That's what they said to the Pharaoh. Don't you see Egypt is destroyed? Let them go. Right? Because this is something here. This verse 7:12:7 is so vital. Against, there shall be a great cry throughout the land of Egypt, such as has never been or ever, such as there has never been or ever be again. But against any of the children of Israel, no dog shall move its tongue against man or against beast, so that you know that Yah makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Question: what is it that made the distinction for Israel? What made their distinction?
They were delivered from all the plagues.
How?
Well, because they obeyed for one.
Bam. Again, this is the simplicity of this walk. This is how simple this walk is. Know what Yah expects and do it. That's all that's required of us. Know what Yah is commanding us to do, find out how to do it, and do it. That's how simple this walk is. You hear that all the time. It should be so, the good news, the message of the good news should be so simple. It's so simple that a baby can do it. You hear people say that all the time. Well, explain it to me then, good pastor. Teach me how to do it. How do I do it? Because I tell you what, if that's the case, it shouldn't be the amount of denominations that exist in our community. There shouldn't be that many churches that exist in our community, with the amount of poverty and crime that's present, and disease and illiteracy. None of that should be present if it's that simple. Because if we were doing it, what does Yah promise if we keep his word? What does he promise us?
That he will make us the head.
Make us the head. What else?
And that we'll be blessed. You know, he said, I set before you this day the blessings and curses.
Yes,
and
sir.
If you obey, then you know, you'll be blessed in the city, you'll be blessed in the field.
There you go.
Yeah.
All that, right? All that. Our kneading bowls would be filled. There would be no dis-ease amongst us, right? None of this stuff would be the case. There would be no crime in our communities. Why? Because we are effectively carrying out the will of Yah. We're understanding that not only am I made, but you are, and we are all made in the image and likeness of Yah. And because of that, we're going to address each other accordingly. Because here's the thing. What are the two commandments upon which the Torah and the prophets hang on? What are the two great commandments that Yah gave us to know?
Love the Most High with all your heart and all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself.
There it goes. If we carry those two sovereign commandments out, everything would be one. Heaven and earth would be united. That's it. That's how simple it is. But I don't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
So now in 11, the prophecy of this death of the firstborn is made. There's a distinction made between Israel and the rest of the world, so to speak. Keep in mind, this is all a prelude to where we are about to go into ourselves. This is a preview of what the world is about to experience very shortly. And I will even say experiencing now. This is what is taking place. And so we have to get ourselves on the side of light, on the side of life.
Excuse me, sir, you remember when was this, a couple of Shabbats back, when you were saying that each generation has the ability to usher in the Messiah, to bring you back once we all get on one accord? Something kind of dawned. I was thinking about when I was at work the other day, and I was thinking about that teaching that you had done. And you know, like when the most Mashiyach said, you know, on this manner pray, the Lord's, what the so-called the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. And then I was remembering something. I was trying to tie the two together. I don't know if it means anything or not. But you remember when Yah said that I heard the cries of the people that came up unto me, right? And you know, and I know a lot of people say that prayer, but in that prayer, isn't that kind of like us calling?
In the Our Father prayer?
Yeah, isn't that calling the kingdom of heaven here? In that prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come.
Undeniably.
Oh, okay.
Undeniably.
So is that sort of like the unity? you know, unity in that prayer, or what am I trying to say?
Yes. Yes.
I think it speaks to the Most High being a connector between heaven and earth. Or that's the common, you know, that's the pillar connecting the two planes. If that makes sense. I mean,
no doubt, no doubt. So here's the thing. What Yahushua gave us was a formula, right? That prayer is a formula. But when you deal with science and math and you have formulas, what do you have to do to arrive at the conclusion and the summation of it? What do you have to do?
you have to do it in order.
You have to work it out. You got to show your work and do it in order, right? So one thing, again, that we have to understand about prayer is not a magical spell that we just speak for something to happen. Now, we can have that power, but that power comes through understanding and application.
Right.
Right? That comes through practice, that comes through having the knowledge on how to manifest that reality. It's not something that just snap your finger, it happens. This is something that we have to get understanding with in order to accomplish. And that's the challenge that we face, is that we have to become the creators that Yah calls us to be. And the way that we do that is through understanding the formulas and the principles and the laws that Yah has given us, to the point that we become the embodiment of it. Once we become the embodiment of it, then yes, just speak it and it can manifest. Elijah would say, if I'm a man of Elohim, let fire fall from heaven. He did that 3 times because he understood and knew who he was. They didn't know, but he demonstrated to them because he was in alignment with Yah's will. And that's the key to it all. Be in alignment with Yah's will.
Okay.
And then everything else will take place. Does that help and respond to your question?
Yes, yeah. I was just, because you know, I remember doing Yom Kippur, right? And
right.
we were over with the Maccabees, right? And when they got all on one accord, you know what I mean? And when they spoke, you know, and it just seemed like any time that Israel united up under one voice, it just seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed like he always heard them or something. You know what I mean? And that's what I was thinking about. But yes, sir.
Powerful. So now we move to the 12th chapter, and this is where formally the instructions of Torah begin for Israel as a nation. Okay. So now he's going to instruct them on what they should do to keep Pesach and Matzot, the festivals of Passover and unleavened bread. Okay. Real quick, is there a difference between Pesach and Matzot? Is there a difference between the festival of Passover and unleavened bread? Is there a difference?
I would say yes.
Okay, excellent. Why do you say yes?
Well, because Pesach is like a small, I don't want to say small, but it's, you know, right at sundown, before sundown that you do it. And then the unleavened bread would be for the week.
Excellent. Right. Pesach is a moment. What defines the Pesach?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's the 14th day.
Right. Where, but what event makes the Pesach the Pesach?
Well, he died.
Okay,
I mean,
so right here, right, verse 6. You keep this lamb until the 14th day of the same month, and all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings. This is Pesach. Pesach is the moment when the Paschal lamb is offered up. And this is done universally. This is supposed to be done universally at the same time during this hour when they're told to do it everywhere. Now, actually, let me recant that statement, excuse me. This is to be done in Jerusalem, because the only place you can make a sacrifice is in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Right? So today, if we got people who are sacrificing lambs outside of Israel, they're not keeping Torah. They're not keeping Torah. That's only done in Jerusalem at the altar. And now we know that the altar is destroyed. No one should be making a sacrifice like that. Not like that, because there's no place to bring the offerings. So what does that translate to? How do we do that today? What do we then do today?
Don't
Thank
we?
you. Say that out loud, Mosiah.
Sacrifice.
We become the offering. We become the offering.
Oh my God.
How do you offer yourself to Yah?
Present yourself a living sacrifice.
Yes, sir. How do you do? What do you do to do that?
Getting yourself together.
What's better than sacrifice?
Obedience.
There it is. That's how you offer yourself to Yah.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Again, this is simple. It's not easy. It's simple. Excuse me. I believe it's chapter 7. Is it 6? There it is. Do you not know Romans 6, right? Speaking of this offering, speaking of this is how we become Passover. 6 through 8, really 5 through 8 really captures the essence of this, what Passover is all about in terms of becoming the sacrifice, even through 12, because it goes on with chapter 12. But do you not know, verse 3, that as many of us as were immersed into Messiah Yehoshua were immersed into his death? You know, that means we died to our own will, to our own ways. We were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, that as Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in newness of life. For we have come to be grown together in the likeness of his death. If we have come to be grown together, this unity, in the likeness of his death, we shall also be of the resurrection, knowing this, that our old man was impaled with him, offered up with him, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no longer. For he who has died has been made right from sin. And if we died with Messiah, we believe that we also shall live with him, knowing that Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer rules over him. For in that he died, here's the offering, he died to sin once for all. But in that he lives to Elohim. So you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Elohim in Messiah Yahushua our Master. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body to obey it in its desires, neither present your members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin, but present yourselves to Elohim as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to Elohim. For sin shall not rule over you. You're not in bondage anymore. You've been brought out of Mitzrayim. You've been brought out of Egypt, right? For you are not under the law of sin and death. Let's be clear about that. We are still in Torah. We are not under the law and subject to sin and death no more, because we've been brought out of that law of bondage. But we are under favor. Favor is given. Let me ask this. What's the purpose of favor or grace? What's the purpose of favor and grace?
To get it right, to repent.
Thank you. Favor or grace, the word is chen in Hebrew. Chen is a gift. That gift is for you to get yourself together and work it out within a time period. So the perfect example of that is receiving clemency for a crime that you may have committed, right? But the clemency or the pardon, if you will say, look, it's like a probationary period. If you do anything within this particular time frame, you won't have any pardon. You're gonna go right back, to the clean, so to speak. But I'm gonna give you this time here. You have 36 months to prove to me that you can not commit any crimes anymore, right? That's what grace is like. It's like a time period for you to prove that you're worthy of the pardon that you received. It doesn't give you a license to go and just act a fool. It's a time frame for you to get your act together. Shabbat shalom and welcome to Silla. And brother Kevin Muhammad, Shabbat shalom to you as well.
Shabbat shalom.
12 now because the sun is down. We are now on to the first day. So Shavua Tov, may you have a great week. We're wrapping this up here. We're in chapter 12 of Exodus. And so we were just talking about becoming the offering, because there's nowhere now that we can make offerings because the temple in Jerusalem is destroyed and there is no altar. So what replaces the Passover lamb but you in becoming the offering? And so this is a very important principle for us to understand, but we also understand that Exodus 12 formally begins the instructions, the Torah, if you will, for Israel to go about knowing how to keep the law, okay? And so even with this, there's still some things that need to be clarified on how to keep what's called the Seder meal that the Torah does not prescribe. We don't understand how to keep the Seder just by reading this. There's things that we have to do to understand what universalizes our experience on this night. I guarantee you this. Keep in mind, Yahushua said that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and the scribes, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Before I bring up a point, my question is, who are the Pharisees and scribes today?
Well, I would say like camps.
Nope. Nope, not at all. They don't descend from who, what entity descends from the Pharisees and the scribes today?
Descend from the scribes?
Yes, what entity today directly descends from the scribes and the Pharisees?
Orthodox?
You're getting to it. You're very much getting to it. Yes, ma'am. Orthodox Jews are a part of a greater idea, though. Would anybody know what they call that idea as relates to Judaism?
Lost me there.
Is it Zionism?
No, Zionism is actually atheistic.
Okay.
So this is rabbinic Judaism.
Oh, rabbinic. Okay.
So when you're dealing with rabbinical Judaism, you're dealing with the direct descendants of the Pharisees. So Yahushua tells us, unless our righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and scribes, we shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. And I guarantee you this, be they Reformed, be they conservative, be they Orthodox, or be they Hasidic, on the 14th evening of the month of Abib, any Jewish house you go into, you will have pretty much the same experience. They will be universally doing the same thing. I guarantee you that. Why? Because they follow the order. They follow what you call the Haggadah. They're united in their experience of observing Pesach the world over. They're united in following the Parashat, the Torah portion for the week. They're united. They're united in the hours of prayer and donning tefillin and wearing the talit. They're united in that. And so my point is, the question I was going to then ask as a result of this here is that what must we do exactly with one spirit? They're in one spirit with this. What must we do, right, to go about truly serving Yah in spirit and truth? And that wasn't my point, but that question came up as well because this Pesach is important.
Be obedient.
And that's the same.
One accord. Yeah, one accord.
Indeed. And this is hard work. This is very hard work. But the process is laid out for us in simple fashion. The execution of it is blood, sweat, and tears, though. It's blood, sweat, and tears. And so, you know, as we are able to discern and recognize these instructions that Yah has given us, we have to sharpen. You know, we have to study this out. We have to know for sure what our duties are. It's like going through the training period if you're on a new job. You're going to go through a training, an intensive training process to understand your role within a greater organization. Right? You're going to learn the history of the organization. You're going to learn the mission, the vision. Then you're going to learn your specific position and what you're supposed to be doing to make this entity function. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing here. So they're telling us how to eat the Pesach, so on and so forth. What's going to happen to those who do not observe it? As this is a night of watches, it tells us this is a night of watches. We'll get to that next chapter, right? So who is this destroyer? And where can we find the destroyer in the New Testament? We.
I want to say, I know he's an angel.
Okay.
I want to say it was the same one that appeared to Elizabeth, wasn't it? Was it Gabrielle? No.
Think of judgment. Where do you encounter this judgment and this amount of death that is carried out in the New Testament?
Revelation?
Yes. Where at?
Was it Revelations? Was it
ready?
3 or is it 6?
Nope.
No.
We'll go right here.
Let me get my Bible out.
All right.
There it is.
Let's go to Revelation 9 and 11. Just getting right to it. They have over them a sovereign. Let me see where it says this. Let me go back some. Let's go back. I'm gonna go back. So this is crucial. The fifth messenger sounded, starting at verse 1, and I saw a star from the heaven which had fallen to the earth, and the key to the pit of the deep was given to it. And he opened the pit of the deep, and smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun was darkened, also the air, because the smoke of the pit. And out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth, and authority was given to them as the scorpions of the earth possess authority. Now listen to this, verse 4. And it was said to them that they shall not harm the grass of the earth or any green matter or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of Elohim upon their foreheads. Who do not have the seal of Elohim upon their foreheads. What is the seal of Elohim upon the foreheads of the people?
Those who keep the commandments and have the testimony.
Yes, those who know and keep the commandments. Matter of fact, when we look at chapter 13, just real quick, it says that it shall be a sign to you on your hand as a reminder between your eyes that the Torah of Yah is to be in your mouth, for with the strong hand Yah brought you out of Mitzrayim. Right?
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Yes. So this destroyer in Revelation 9, believe it or not, is the same destroyer that you read about in Exodus 13 or 12, excuse me. Right? So this is the one who comes out of the pit of the deep. They have a sovereign, this king, a messenger of the pit of the deep, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, which means the father of destruction. But in Greek, he has the name of Apollyon. So here's the question. Is Abaddon for or against Yah?
For. He works his judgment.
Is Abaddon to destroy the people of Yah or not?
No, that's why he said any green trees, because the trees represent the people.
Right. The trees, the sea, the grass, and those who are marked by Elohim. He's not touching them.
No.
They're marked. It's the same thing when you go to Ezekiel 8 and you read of those who put the mark on the people's forehead, but they go and they smite everyone else who doesn't have that mark. But the what is the mark of Yah though? And you did say it, Brother Kim. What did you say?
Those who keep the commandments and have the testimony of the Mashiyach.
Yes, indeed. The Torah.
The Torah.
This is the mind of Yah. The mark, the seal of Yah is his mind, his spirit, his word. Remember, the word and the spirit are synonymous. For the words I speak to you, Yahushua says in John 6:63, the words I speak to you are spirit and life.
Life, yeah.
When you understand this seal, which is the word, is about Yah preserving you and keeping you ready and set apart to be a member of this kingdom.
Can I say something, sir, that I didn't mean to interrupt you?
You're not, you're fine.
I think it's in Exodus, or it may be in Numbers, where he said, those who keep the Sabbath, this shall be a sign unto me that you are mine. I don't remember what chapter that's in, right? But when you were talking about the mind, you know, having the written in your mind, right? Those who keep the commandments and have the testimony of Mashiyach, right? But he was also, when he said in I believe it was in Numbers, where he said, those who keep the Shabbat, those who keep the Shabbat, there shall be a sign unto me, that those who keep the Sabbath, that's a sign to him that they are his, they belong to him. You understand?
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. That's in Exodus 31, I think.
Yeah.
It's also in Ezekiel 20. I know that for sure. Yeah. But I think it is in Exodus 31. Let's go there real quick, because I just looked it up. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. I did not know where it was.
Yeah, I need to write it down, because I always forget where that is.
I think it's 31:19. It said when I looked it up. Here it is, 17. Between me and the children of Israel, speaking of the Sabbath, it is a sign forever.
Forever.
6 days Yah made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah. So it's really 13 through 18. Great point. So that's a part of the sign. I mean, and that's just that, again, this sanctification of time is so important. A lot of other religions sanctify space, buildings, people, right? What Yah sanctifies is time, because he is the master of time. He's the creator of time. No one else can make that claim, really, because Yah is the one who brought time into existence. And what he did was set that apart as a sanctuary for his people to enter into. And this is why Yahushua says, you know what? Speaking to the woman at the well in John 4, there's going to come a time, woman, where it doesn't matter where you worship Yah, because Yah wants you to worship him in spirit and truth, no matter where you are. Now, he's going to bring you back to the place that he has chosen for his name to be. But he wants Israel as a kingdom and as a nation to get ourselves together and worship him in spirit and truth universally. And so time is how we got to get it together. We got to get it together with and in time. So all of this is very important as relates to us knowing how to please Yah.
And sir, I'm just gonna say that I ain't gonna cut you off no more. And that's
Great.
why the serpent, that's the reason why the serpent, right? That's why I said in those latter days, they will seek to change laws and times.
Yes, sir.
Right? The only law that is a time is the Shabbat. And that's the one that they changed from Saturday
Indeed.
to Sunday.
Now they changed the appointed times too. They changed the appointed times.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so.
I just wanted to bring that out.
Indeed. Shabbat Shalom, Drusilla. I see that you've arrived. Hallelujah. I want to welcome you to Beit Mashiyach. Pray you get everything you're looking for and more. Ima Liori, I saw your hand. You want to go ahead and respond?
Yes, I think Brother Demetrius hit on it though. But what I saw was, and what I see is that Yah is establishing the time of his feast and the time of his appointments with us. Not only just the actions, but he's also saying, you know, on this month, on this day of the month, be there,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that that's another aspect that it's when you first begin to keep the feast, that's something that can be, I think it takes about 2 years to me, from my experience, to go through the feast cycle and then maybe, you know, to understand, because it's a little difficult to come out of what we've been doing.
Right, the conventional traditional.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important. And you know what's so powerful about these feast days that Yah has given us, which you can read all of them in Leviticus 23, is that, to be frank, they are the blueprint of our salvation. I think I may have mentioned this before. The holy days that Yah has given us represent the plan of salvation that his people can follow to be in the right place at the right time when judgment hits. Just like Goshen, right? They did everything Yah commanded them to do, and he told them, put the blood on the lintels and the threshold of the door, because at this hour, I'm going out and I'm striking all the firstborn. And guess what? If you didn't do that within that hour, you suffered. You suffered. If you weren't on time and doing that, you suffered. And so time is very important for us to redeem. This is why the apostle tells us to redeem the time, for these days are dark. We have to make sure that we're dedicating our time to Yah in whatever we're doing. It's that important for us because our souls are at stake. Our souls are at stake, and that's what the enemy is hunting for. That's what, you know, he's hungering and walking around seeking to kill, steal, and destroy any and every one that he can through deception. And the deception is so thick. We know that. But as relates to these feast days, this phrase here is very important. An everlasting law. Let's take a look at this word here in Hebrew. Everlasting law. That's verse 14. So it says, Eolam tahagahu, achuchat slika. So let me just read this. Vahaya hayom hazeh lechem la zachron v'chagatem oto chag leYahuwah ledorotechem huchat. This is law. Huchat eolam tahagahu. Right. So it's a huchat eolam. This is the word for law, as I mentioned earlier to you all. Huchat. Okay. Listen real quick. Hucha or chacha That's the word for law. That is the proper word for law, not Torah, Hucha, okay? This is the proper word for law. Substantially the same, appointed, custom, manner, ordinance, site, statute. When you go to the root word, hoch, this is where you get the word law. This is the proper word for law, not Torah. Torah means instruction. The proper word for law is the Hebrew word hoch, from hocha, okay? Hachach, slika, hachach is the root. Hachach is the word that means laws, and even a lawgiver. I was probably about 4 days old, like 4 days ago when I learned this reality. I was doing some studies and saw that there was a difference between Torah, which I thought meant law, but it does not mean law. Torah just means instructions about the law. That's very deep. So what we're receiving here is the Torah about how to keep the Pesach, which is the law. The law is the Pesach. What Yah is doing with the Torah is explaining how to keep giving Israel the instructions on how to keep the Torah, or the law, excuse me, of Pesach. So we see again, unleavened bread is the week, Pesach is the moment. What does the leaven symbolize? What does the leaven symbolize?
Sin.
So where is the leaven truly supposed to be removed from?
Your heart.
Yes. So the house that they're talking about removing leaven from, for 7 days, no leaven is found in your house. For if one eats what is leavened, the same being should be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Now, here's a question. 7 days, what does that represent?
7. I know that.
Creation.
Creation. Very much so.
That's right.
Very much so. Right? So this is pretty much every day of our life. We should not have leaven found in our house. This is until kingdom comes. What Pesach is doing is only representative in a week, what we should be doing every day in our life. This is just a reminder, a memorial that inspires you to keep the principle of it every day of your life. Shabbat is the same thing. This is rehearsal. This is practice. This is conditioning, right? That is preparing us to become masters of ourselves. Now look at who he commands the elders to get the lambs. Going out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans, right? Dealing with the firstborn and particularly the elders here though. But this is why order is so important. Shall guard this word as law for you and your sons forever, right? What about this blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts? What does that represent? How does that apply today? What is the principle? I'll give you a little more deeper understanding. What's the messianic principle of this blood on the lintel and the doorpost?
Know that we are Israel.
Yeah. But the application of the blood, what does this mean?
Is that for
It's a sign.
It's a sign. And go ahead, Ima, Sharon, I was hearing you.
Yahshua.
Expand it too, but expand that.
Okay, well, at the time when it said that his blood sprinkled over everything, when they when they whipped him with the nails and the bone and marred him up and tore him up, the blood sprinkled everywhere. And it, I mean, that's how I know it. I don't know, it might not be what you want looking for.
What is the blood in relation to humanity and to even animal? What does blood represent?
Life.
Life, okay? So when you're talking about pleading the blood and being covered in the blood, what are you covered in as relates to Yahushua? His what?
Life.
His life.
Mhm.
So you're living a life that is reflective of what Yahushua has done. And the lintel and the threshold, what did the lintel and the threshold represent in terms of to our house, our spiritual house?
Our mind.
Yes.
The life.
Our,
Well, here's the question again. Where are the signs, according to Exodus 13, to be that we're to bear this?
On our hands
on our
and our
head and our
Yes.
hand.
Yes. So our actions should represent the life of Yahushua. Our thoughts should represent the life of Yahushua, because the lintel, the head, the mind, and the two doorposts are our hands, or really our legs, because those are posts that we walk in this life. That's what y'all wants to see. Y'all don't want to see us. Y'all wants to see his son. Y'all wants to see his child. Y'all wants to see his spirit, his word in, on, and through us. Because why? We are guarding this word as a law forever. This is who we've become. This is what we've become. Y'all wants to see him when he sees us. That's who y'all really wants to see, because Yahushua is the perfect representation in the express image of Yah. The Shekinah, truly on earth is supposed to be us. We're supposed to be the presence of Yah on earth. And this is what Israel is now demonstrating to Egypt. Why are y'all not getting touched? Because we are Yah on earth. So all the firstborn get smitten, right? Israel has this unleavened bread. They make haste because now there's no sin in their life. They're understanding that they have a duty to fulfill. Notice where they go. The children of Israel set out from Ramesses to Sukkot. What is the significance of this place here that they arrive at?
It's ingathering.
Huh?
Is that ingathering, Sukkot?
Ah, there you go. And so what does the ingathering have as its what is the experience of Sukkot? What does Sukkot contain? What does it demonstrate?
Well,
look at Revelation 21 real quick. 20 rather. It is 21. 21 verse 3. This is what Sukkot is really all about. See, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell. I would probably say it's supposed to with in them. So when they get to Sukkot, it is because they are supposed to now be the living temple, the living tabernacle at that time, because they were still wandering, of Yah. So by the time they get to Sukkot, they are supposed to have prepared themselves to become the living tabernacle. Does that make sense? You all see what that's saying?
Yes.
Hallelujah. I told her I'll quote. And so there's a lot of Israelites who say that this is only for Israel proper, but when we see who came up out of Israel because they kept Yah's word, there's a mixed multitude. There's a mixed multitude, and even more expressly, Yah says to Moshe, no son of a stranger is to eat of it, but continue listening to this. But any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. So there is a condition upon which some sojourner can eat it. If you've purchased him, if you redeemed him, right? If this man has gone through redemption and has changed his life from Gentile and idolatry to an Israelite in faithfulness, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Israel to perform it. And when a stranger sojourns with you, and shall perform the Passover to Yah, because now here's the condition again. Let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and perform it. And he shall be as native of the land. Yeah. But let no uncircumcised eat of it. There is one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. This is a global reality that we are supposed to manifest on earth. If there's supposed to be a new heaven and a new earth, well, then the stranger amongst us, the Gentile, they have to be convinced that Yah lives. And whose role and responsibility is that?
Ours.
The children of Israel. Exactly, Akol. This is our responsibility. We are the light to the nations. And this is who the world is waiting for to arise right now in spirit and truth. Those of the world who want a new way of life. But our adversaries are very vehement about snuffing this light out.
Absolutely.
Anything else from chapter 12?
No.
All right, so 13, 1 through 16. This is where we see the order of Melchizedek established nationally. The firstborn, the one opening of the womb among the children of Israel, belongs to Yah. This is where the initial priesthood was established, right here. The firstborn was given to Yah as the leader, as the head, the spiritual leader and head of the family. So when we read the commentary, let me see where it says. The three topics are related. The firstborn, the Pesach, and the Tefillin. The conclusion of the Sidra, or this portion, consists of two passages, both of which refer to the holiness of the firstborn and the obligation to teach future generations about the miracles of the Exodus. Also, both of them conclude with the commandment of the Tefillin, which are the leather and parchments that we wrap on our arm and put on our head. And they therefore include among the four scriptural passages, that are contained in the compartments of the Tefillin. But again, the holiness of the firstborn at this particular time, before the incident of the golden calf, gave us the establishment of the priesthood. The priesthood was a open tribal duty that was inclusive of all firstborn males. However, after the incident of the golden calf, it specifically went to Levi, because Levi was the only tribe that came to Moshe and then went about smiting those who did not keep the commandments of Yah at that incident. This is a very important part right here. Okay, subtle as it is, but this is where the priesthood was established. Okay. Of course, we dealt with the unleavened bread and the reminder of it, but now we have the commandment of the Tefillin. Now, this is what the oral law provides us with, how to carry this about. What is it as a sign on our hand and a reminder between our eyes? What does that look like? How do we do it? And this is why, and Moshe explained this, and let me be clear, Moshe further went on to explain this in more detail with Israel, because they had to practice this. They had to execute this particular instruction. And so doing so, Moses has to provide the instructions on how to do so. Okay. And so this is mentioned twice. This is a very important sign that we are to carry out. Okay, but those signs, what is this? Well, we know what it represents, the actions and the thoughts of the people, because that's where Yah wants us to be more aligned with him, in our thoughts, our mind, and in our hands, which is representative of our actions. Okay. So anything else from this here? Because we're going to start wrapping up, because we have an appointment here to make before 7 ourselves, and we want to get to about 6:30 to wrap up. But is there anything else from the Torah portion, Bo, that anybody wants to bring up before we transition to the half Torah? Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? All right. So with Jeremiah, we're just dealing with a prophecy as relates again to Egypt's ruin during the probably 500s BC. You're dealing with the Babylonian Empire. Okay. And this is a time when Nebuchadnezzar and his son Nebuchadrezzar had established their imperial dominance over this particular region of the country, of the world, excuse me. And so Egypt suffered a mighty defeat. And we see a huge Babylonian influence come into this particular region that is succeeded, interestingly, by the Persians, and then into the Grecians, and then lastly with the Romans. So this is just a historical prophetic pronouncement that would tell Egypt that it's going to suffer, but they can find redemption as well. Okay. Anything from here? Anyone have anything from Jeremiah 46 that they want to bring up? Questions, comments? All right, we'll close out with 1 Corinthians 5 and dealing with the fellowship and the unity of the body and the observance of the Pesach and Matzot, okay? I think this key verse here, verse 8, is so important. Let us observe the festival not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil or wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth, okay? Yah desires for us to be an innocent, pure, and set apart people. As such, what this kingdom is really about is wholehearted members seeking to serve Yah in spirit and truth. So this is about the heart condition. And when I say heart, the mental disposition, the emotional disposition, the intellectual disposition of humanity. Yah wants those three things dedicated to him. If we can dedicate our intellect, our spiritual awareness, and our emotional state of being to Yah, give those and offer those up to him, he will return us in a condition that will be really unshakable, because that's the kingdom that we have to inherit. The only way we're going to inherit an unshakable kingdom is if we inherit first an unshakable consciousness. Does that make sense to anybody?
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And so the way that we do that is through a cleansing. What do we do? How do you go about cleansing on Pesach? What in Matzah? What do you do? What are some of the things that you do on in preparation to have this festival truly experienced? What are you doing?
Remove the leaven.
Okay, so get a little more detail. How do you do? Like, what are you doing to do that? What are you like paying attention to remove the leaven?
So I think, preparing yourself to have a clean heart, preparing your home.
Yeah. So let's think of it in terms of the physical leaven, though, because we're going to transfer it to the spiritual lesson. When we're removing the leaven from the house, like what do you have to do to make sure you got all the leaven?
That's bread.
I mean, that's important to get guided through prayer, yeah. But to physically remove the leaven from your house, what do you have to do? You got to clean. Okay, that's huge. What else?
First, identify where it is.
There you go. Identify what contains leaven. That's huge, because you may have something in the refrigerator that has a leavening agent, and you got to remove it. And you got to be very attentive to that. Not only identify, but be attentive to what contains leaven and remove it. It's the same thing as relates to sin in our life. You have to identify what sin is. You have to be attentive to where sin rises up, and then you have to remove it from you. And that's how we overcome sin in our life, because this is all about overcoming sin, which then gives us victory over what? If we overcome sin, what else do we also overcome?
Death.
Death. 100%. And this is why the Son of Man was sent, was to destroy the works of the devil, which are sin and death. So when we understand that Yahushua has set us free from the law of sin and death, he's released us from a spiritual Egypt. He's called us out of a spiritual Egypt. We have then the responsibility to go about creating the new life that he has called us to live as a kingdom, not as individuals, but as a unified nation. And what we're doing today is a part of it. This is essential because we have to come together and understand what we need to understand in order for unity to be present, because it is the principle that keeps people united. It is the laws that keep people united. And the understanding of it. And that's what we have to get. And we have to remove anything that is adversarial to it. This is what this chapter is about. This is about removing the leaven that is amongst our community. Whoring. Then he goes on to say, greedy of gain, swindlers, idolaters, right? Things that would keep us from uniting. Because these are selfish people. These are very cynical, selfish, egotistical people. And they cannot be a part of the kingdom because they will spread like cancer. This is why the idea of innocence, the principle of innocence is so important. And being guilt-free. That's why Romans 8:1 is so important. Therefore, there is now no condemnation to those who are in Mashiyach Yahushua, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the spirit. Because condemnation, where does condemnation start? Anybody know what? Huh?
With sin?
With sin, which is then what? Where does that sin first have its appearance in terms of the condemnation that takes place?
The mind.
Then the mind, with the sinner. Condemnation starts with the sinner. We condemn ourselves so many times, first and foremost. Yah doesn't want us to carry that burden. Get set free from that. But the only way you can do it is by not doing the things that make you feel like you are condemned. Uproot that from your life, cleanse it out. Don't you know a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. Also, Messiah, our Passover, was offered for us. This is the redemption. This is the ransom that took place. This is the ransom right here. This is the exchange. This is the exchange. The Messiah died for us so that we could have life. He took all the guilt, all the shame, and bore it himself. Now, all we have to do is live a life that is grateful for what he did for us. If someone bonded us out of jail, purchased us a lawyer who defended us, and had us exonerated from that particular matter, we're indebted. We are entirely indebted. And so with that, well, our life is not our own. What can I do to repay you? Just don't do that stuff no more. No problem. No problem. Thank you. Thank you. Because you're impacted. Because you know what could have been. Selah, Selah. Any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts? No closing thoughts? Well, all right. Let's go ahead and close then. So we're going to close out with the Elenu Prayer. Wake up. What's that, Hosea? Wake up. We're closing out the prayer. Wake up, wake up. All right. So next week we will start Parashat, I believe it is Beshalach, and they went out. And so we will pick that up next week. We're going to close out with the Elenu Prayer. You want to read the English after I get done? So I'm going to do it in Hebrew first. We'll probably hand it here, then we'll go ahead into the English. So hallelujah. Elenu l'shabeach le'adon hakol latei gedula layatzir breshit shelo asanu kegoy haritzot ve'lo samanu b'mishpachot hadama shalo sam hachenu chahim ve'gor aleinu kakol hamonam ve'anachnu korim u'mishtacholim u'modim b'fnei melech melki hamalakim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'yosor horetz Meshov yakra'o b'shamayim ima'al u'shechinat ozo b'gobo hai morumim u'eloheinu einod met malkeinu efes zolato hakatuv b'torato v'yadata hayom v'heshobota levavaka ki yahu achuva Elohim b'shamayim ima'al va'al ha'aretz medechad einod El kein nachbe lacha Yahuwah Eloheinu la'ra'ot mahraba teferenu zaka Abir golanim min haaretz v'halalim kerot yikraton v'tachin yalam v'amel chot shadai v'kol b'ni basar yikra'u b'shemecha v'yaponot eliki koroshi eretz yikiru v'yodeu kol yeshvei tovah ki lachat yikra kol barek tishabah kol lashon v'faneka Yahuwah Eloheinu yikra'u v'yifalu v'lechavos shemka yakar yotanu Yikabalu kolam et at malkuteka v'timlok Elohim mahra le'olam v'yed ki hamel kol shel chahi u'le'olami et timlok b'kavod kakatuv b'toratecha Yahuwah yimlok le'olam v'yed v'ne'amar v'chaya Yahuwah l'melech al kol ha'aretz v'yom ha'hu yihyeh Yahuwah echad u'shamo echad.
We can't hear him.
El made our lot unlike that of other people, assigned us to assign us a unique destiny. We bend a knee and bow, acknowledging the supreme sovereignty. the Holy One, exalted, who spread out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, whose glorious abode is in the loftiest heights, and whose mighty in the highest heaven, and whose mighty dominion is in the loftiest heights. He is our El, there is no other. In truth, Yah alone is our ruler, as is written in his truth in the Torah. Know this day and take it to thy heart, that Adonai is El in heaven above and on earth beneath. There is no other. We also hope in you, Adonai, our El, soon to see your splendor, that you will sleep idolatry away, so that false gods will be utterly destroyed, and that you will be perfect under the world, or will be perfect the world by your name, by your sovereignty, so that all humanity will invoke your name, and all the world's wicked will return to you, repent it. Then all who live will know that to you every knee must bend, every tongue pledge loyalty to you, Adonai. May all bow and worship. May they give honor to your glory. May everyone accept your dominion, reign over all soon and for them in all time. Sovereignty is yours in glory, now and forever. Thus it is written in your Torah, Adonai reigns forever and ever. Such is the prophetic assurance, Adonai shall be acknowledged ruler over all the earth. On that day shall Yah be one and his name one.
Hallelujah. Yahuwah v'yishmarecha, Ya'er Yahuwah panav alecha v'yihunecha, Yisai Yahuwah panav alecha v'yisim lecha. Shalom. May Yah bless you and keep you. May Yah cause his countenance to shine upon you, be kind unto you. May Yah lift up his countenance unto you and give you peace. Hallelujah. So that does conclude our study for today. We will be gathering on this Wednesday at 7 p.m. going over the Aleph Bet and the evening prayer for the week. And so we do Wednesday nights. Tusila, I know tonight's your first night, so again, Shavua Tov to you, and I hope that you enjoyed it. But we do Wednesday nights 7 p.m. and then every Shabbat day at 3 p.m. where we go over the Torah portion, we read it, and then we discuss it. So that is, pretty much what we do. We got some other things that we're working on.